Oh, it's me. It's me. It's the SCO double T. It's your good buddy Djclyve here. It has been a really long time since I did one of these things. As a matter of fact, it's probably been over a year since I've done a commentary on a Ranma 1/2 character profile. But I felt that these two recent profiles that showed up on the channel, they deserve a little bit of explanation. So what we're watching right now is the Shinosuke's grandfather profile, to be followed by the Satori profile. Two very, very strange profiles that I never thought I was ever going to get around to doing them. In particular, the one we're watching right now, Shinosuke's grandfather. This is a character I always had in the back burner, and I knew I wanted to do him someday. But I always kind of said to myself, is he really that big a character to profile? And I didn't know if I would have enough footage or enough info on the character to really constitute, a decent profile that people could actually watch and be entertained by. So I kind of just tucked this character away into the back burner and, kept him in a little dusty pile and just said, maybe someday I'll pull him out if I get desperate for something to show on the channels. And it took a while, but I think I finally am at that point where I am starting to get a little bit desperate for characters to chronicle here. And I found myself reaching into that dusty pile to pull this character out. What I've got going on here is basically the Djclyve show, which has been in production for over a year now, is finally near completion. As a matter of fact, the final part, which has yet to debut on YouTube as of this video being released here, it's all done. That's right, part 10 of the Djclyve show is in the books. It is on my hard drive sitting right next to me, and it's been done for over a month now. And why am I not releasing it, you might be asking? Well, that's because I always intended for the Djclyve show to be the absolute last Ranma-related thing to be released on my channel. Once I finally get this thing up there, you're going to watch it and you're going to say, oh yeah, that's definitely a finale. He definitely tried to go out with a bang on that one. But unfortunately, I can't show it on YouTube as of yet because there are still more profiles pending, in particular the Gaming 1/2 special, which these profiles take a lot of time. In particular, the Red Cat Gang profile, which is such a difficult game. I'm not the one playing it. This is all Jara on his end, and he says he's having trouble getting past certain characters, and how role-playing games are. It's all about grinding and gaining levels, and those things are very, very time-consuming. So to even get the background footage that we need for that profile, it's going to take a lot of time. I'm hoping that these profiles are going to be done at some point in 2018. The last profile that we have, the Shingoki profile, we don't even have a game plan as far as how we're going to present this one. We have a couple ideas, but we are trying, we know we're in kind of a crunch mode here. And the one idea that we had, I don't want to get into too much detail on it because it's probably not going to come to pass. But it was a really, really big idea. And I, while we were writing the script, I said, maybe we should have a backup script just in case this doesn't pan out, because this is going to be a lot of work. A lot of stuff that's going to have to go into it besides just me talking over anime footage. And that's something I still haven't gotten around to with everything that's been on my plate lately. I'm working on a lot of projects that are going to debut at the very, very end of my YouTube career. So when I get there, I'm going to be ready. I'll be able to, have a nice steady flux of videos on the channel, and hopefully try to keep up that weekly format that Limbo Grub always has, because that's where the basic storyline of Djclyve is going to happen, on Limbo Grub. So yeah, the whole story goes that besides the Djclyve show, I really hadn't intended on jumping right back into Ranma 1/2, doing the whole character profile thing. I thought I'd covered basically all the grounds I needed to cover there. But in the interim, I have to be putting something up on the channel besides Limbo Grub, to break the monotony of that show, which, that show is very divisive. A lot of the Ranma fans don't watch that show. They just skip right over it. And, if they're looking on my timeline and they see nothing but Limbo Grub, it could be tempting for them to just dump my channel if they're just waiting for Ranma stuff. So, I thought I would do some of these profiles in the interim while I'm waiting and while we're working on these profiles to try to get them done. But yeah, so that's the only reason why these profiles exist. I did have fun doing them, and I did put a lot of love into them, but really they were not on my drawing board at all. They are here mainly just to fill time, to fill the giant gap in between now and the Gaming 1/2 special. Once that Gaming 1/2 special debuts, expect the Djclyve show, the final part, part 10, to be fired off on my YouTube channel as soon as I can, as well as the standalone top 20, the part 2 on that. So yeah, we're watching Shinosuke's grandfather here. This was a very fun profile to do, a very unorthodox profile the way that I tackled it. Doing the voice of Shinosuke's grandfather, who I've never even attempted to do this character's voice. I don't think I was really in the ballpark, but I just had to do a basic old man voice and just say, okay, that works, and I just did the whole profile from his point of view. There were some tough things about this profile, like filling in a lot of gaps as far as like where the storytelling, it was very, very vague. Like, they never actually explained why he was in the forest with his grandson, where the rest of his family was, just how they even connect to society, because it's very, very strange. They kind of live aloof from everybody in Ryugunzawa, but they are in contact, they're in regular contact with people, because there's constantly people going through there, like families picnicking and people, I assume, going on like field trips and stuff like that. People are constantly going in and out of Ryugunzawa, so it's not like they're all alone out there. Hell, it's easy to forget the reason why they're going through all the trouble to, knocking all these animals out and making all these traps and whatnot, is to protect all the people who are visiting there or who are living there. Now, I'm not going to say that I didn't lick my lips at the opportunity of filling in these gaps, like, with my own color. When I see situations like that, I say to myself, all right, what's the best thing that I can do? What's the way that I can tackle this? So I still honor the source material, but just kind of, patch up like the little holes that are not really explained. And, I don't bastardize the source material too much in doing so. And I think with this profile, I treaded a little bit softly. I didn't want to add too much stuff, but it came out pretty well. So the crispness of the video that you're seeing here and all these newfangled special effects, all these editing tricks, this is courtesy of my new editing software, Power Director, by Cyberlink. It's a very user-friendly program. It's a lot more user-friendly. It does a lot of things better than Avid, which is the software I used to use for these profiles, as well as Pinnacle Studio. The thing that it does that I just absolutely love, it's a luxury that Avid and Pinnacle did not afford me. You can do a profile out of order, which is something that is completely new to me. If I want to go, if I find some perfect footage for the end of the movie, I could just skip right to the end and just insert that there. And then I could just insert other clips as I see fit, and it doesn't move and shift everything around every time I add a clip. The only thing that's kind of a bitch is that if you use any transition effects, then it'll pull everything that you have afterwards forward a little bit, so everything will be out of time if you use fade effects and stuff like that. But that's all stuff that can be finagled too. You can, if I want to avoid using a fade effect, I could just fiddle with the opacity and a timeline effect, and there are ways of getting around it. But, you know, as with any software that you have, for every, like, really good thing that it has over the others, there's always drawbacks, and this program's got a real doozy, let me tell you. If your profile, your movie, whatever you're working on gets a little bit too busy, and there are various definitions of the word busy. I don't feel like any of my movies are that busy, but, If it's more than the program can handle, you can't watch what you're doing. You have to basically, let me put it this way. When you first start editing using this program, it's beautiful. You know, you can do really pretty much anything your heart desires. It's got a very limited palette of like special effects and fades, but you know, I try not to go too crazy with that stuff. But when you hit about like the 10-minute mark of, and it doesn't matter like how complicated your program is, when you hit about like 10 minutes or over, then all of a sudden the whole thing starts to freeze and you can't play your video, you can't watch what you did back. And I find myself looking at, like, you know how when you do like the voiceover and you could see like the sound waves, like the interpretation of your voice like in the sound bar there, I find myself trying to line my clips up with that, like trying to figure out, all right, well, this is where my voice rose, so I can tell that's exactly where I said such and such, so I place my clips over there. And this profile we're about to watch right here, the Satori profile, I had that problem right from the get-go. Like, I don't know if my computer is too bogged down, like maybe I have to do a wipe soon, maybe I have to like back up my like all my data and everything like that, get this thing cleaned up, but it refused to play anything that I put in this profile. I have a feeling a lot of it has to do with all the different types of video that I put in, like different file formats, all sorts of, like, I had to like do a lot of filming for this one, a lot of movies that I rented from Netflix, some that I got out from the library for this one. A lot of different types of files went into this one. A lot of like multimedia. It wasn't just the anime. So I think all that stuff being on my drawing board was just way too much for this program to handle, and it was just slowing down like almost right from the beginning, which really made this a bitch and a half. It made me pine for the old days where it was like Bit Character Month 2, and I did like 13 profiles in like 4 months. How the hell did I do it that fast? Well, there's no reason why this profile should have gone as slowly as it did, besides the fact that the program was just acting a fool. Alright, I'm going to freeze frame here because the profile's starting to get away from me. What a wonderful freeze frame this is. You're going to see this beady-eyed ape staring at you for a while, so I apologize for that. So yeah, I would say that this profile took me the better part of 4 months to do start to finish. No thanks to the program itself, like I said, causing all sorts of slowdowns and delays and just being an overall bitch to work with. And the script really didn't do me any favors because I had a lot of areas that I couldn't cover with anime footage alone, and I had to try to find all sorts of different other ways to represent the things that I was saying. And it was very difficult to do so because a lot of what I was saying had to deal with apes and like ape humans, apes in the woods, like attacking humans. And there were very few things that I could find that would be applicable to this profile, at least few things that would be allowable on YouTube. I'm sure I could have easily went to my Planet of the Apes movies, which I have all of them on Blu-ray, and used that footage, but that footage would have probably had this video yanked off of YouTube sooner than later. I had to try to find some more obscure things, so I was very much dumpster diving through like oodles of DVDs and old like B movies of apes and like apes versus humans, killer ape movies, you know, apes on the loose, you know, all sorts of weird things like that. I really saw some let's just say, some movies of questionable quality. You go to your local Netflix and you see those movies that are reasonable facsimiles of your favorite films. Well, they had a long list of like Return of the Planet of the Monkeys, cheap knockoffs of Planet of the Apes movies. And when you go you look at the box art and it looks very, very professionally made. Even when you start the movie up, they have like computer graphics and stuff like that, which would give you the illusion that these things were very professionally made. But then when you actually watch the movie, it looks like something that somebody just recorded on their phone, or with an old-fashioned VHS camcorder back in the day, and the film quality's all shoddy, and the apes are just like Spencer Gifts masks, and it's really, really bad, shockingly bad. There was one movie called Swamp Ape, which I use a very quick clip of in this movie, which was borderline pornographic at one point. The ape had like this giant like lipstick doggy style wiener, and he was chasing women around with it. It was very, very sick and twisted and depraved. I don't suggest you seek that one out, or seek it out if you're morbidly curious. But yeah, my multimedia search wasn't limited to just monkey-related stuff. I had to find stuff related to the human mind when talking about letting your mind go to deal with Satori, and of course I had to deal with the whole Buddhist philosophy of Satori itself. I had to find footage to try to cover that when I go through that spiel in the script. So it was a very tough edit. I had to try to go through some unorthodox sources to try to find, ways to fill the gaps, including what you're looking at right here. This is perhaps the most unorthodox of the ways that I was able to fill time, and that is me going to the woods. This is actually the same woods where I filmed Ranma Oblivion a while back, to do this impromptu Djclyve, let's just call it Djclyve versus the ape, this footage that you're seeing right here. I just want to make it known that it was not my original intention to feature so much Djclyve and live action stuff in this profile. But it was very, very tough to cover this script that I wrote out. As a matter of fact, the reason why I went about it the way I did was because there was very little information about Satori out there. You might notice all the still pictures that I show of Satori earlier in the profile. It's pretty much all the still pictures that are out there. Very, very tough to find visual representation of what Satori is. And when I went through all my material and I didn't have anywhere else left to turn, I had no other choice but to create my own material. This is actually from an earlier idea I had for something to maybe shoot for the earlier portions of the profile. I had the idea when I was vacationing in Maui to do a little skit there, but then I thought to myself, it's going to be a little bit too much of a bitch and a half to edit this. I wasn't really confident in my abilities to be able to create, a scenario with Djclyve and he's interacting with a character that's not really there. So I nixed that idea. I filmed some other stuff that, I filmed stuff in Maui that you'll be seeing in the profile later, and that originally was my only intended live action footage that was going to be in this. But, as I was editing this thing together, there was always that giant gap during that section where I'm explaining, what the Satori is. And I'm like, keep saying to myself, how the hell am I going to fill that gap? And I just had to go back to that idea. Djclyve talking with this imaginary ape that's not really there. And I'm like, I wasn't very confident I could make it look good, but I have to try to make it happen because it's the only idea I have left. And so I went to the woods and I made it happen. And I think, the cheesiness of it kind of helps it along. Gonna restart the video here. Oh yeah, the whole monkey cheese gag. How can I not think of that that YouTube video from a while back where, it was just a bunch of pictures of monkeys talking and saying monkey cheese. I never knew that in the very, very beginning when I saw that it had anything to do with James Rolfe, but he's actually the guy who produced that video along with that other dude, Mike Matei. Yeah, there's a bit of a questionable scene coming up where Djclyve is accosted from the rear by this ape. I thought that might be seen as offensive by some people. I always try to jump into these videos and try to tread soft when it comes to things that might offend people. Originally, I was going to put a giant censored bar over that whole scene. It's coming up right here. But I thought it was too funny not to share. It's not like you see any penetration or anything like that. It's just a silly little gag, and the way I look at it, it's just a friendly humping. The same way a dog would hump your leg, or a rabbit would hump a balloon or something like that. So did Djclyve have his life ever altered one majestic day in the forest. Yeah, it was a pretty simple shoot that day. Actually, it spanned a couple days. I had to keep going back for fill-in shots because I kept forgetting things or thinking of new ways to do things, and it kind of stunk because not only is the park not very close to my house, it's actually almost a half hour drive away, but it also costs money to get in. So every time I walked through the doors there, I had to pay $10, which is a complete ripoff. But it was a small price to pay to finally close that gap, which had been plaguing me for many months. And I hope it was worth it. I hope it actually made this profile something special, because I always like these profiles to stand out, like for one profile to be completely different from another profile. And there's no other profile that's like the Satori profile. You're not going to see anything quite like the antics between Djclyve and a killer ape in the forest. It definitely helps this profile to stand out. But originally I wanted this profile to go even longer with the explanation of what Satori is and the backstory there. Longtime viewers of the channel might realize that I have profiled this character once before in the Psychics profile, and back then I was scouring the internet looking for info on this character because they said that he was based on a famous Japanese fairy tale. And I'm looking everywhere, Wikipedia, all sorts of different private websites about Japanese mythology, and I couldn't find anything on Satori as a fairy tale. Now, that was then. This is now. There's a lot more info out there about Satori, but everything that I find is not of a fairy tale, but more of this horror show of it being like a, I don't know, kind of like a Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster type thing, where, it's something that hikers are scared of in the forest, that they're going to be assaulted by this creepy ape that reads minds. That's all the info that I could find on it. I didn't even find a mention on the internet about it being a children's fairy tale and for it being a boy instead of an ape. I would greatly appreciate for anybody watching this video to provide a link to a page where it actually mentions anything about this young boy Satori and his place in Japanese mythology, or and or fairy tales, because I looked everywhere, and I did some serious digging. I couldn't find squat. The scene right there that I talked over, the scene of Satori reading Haposai's mind and seeing all the the bodacious breasticles and his nosebleed, all that. Funny story about that scene right there. I actually had to go back and re-edit this movie after it was finished, because originally, during that whole section, I had George Michael's Careless Whisper playing in the background instead of that Kenny G song. It was just one of those deals where I just thought of it in my mind. I was just like, it sounds like a good idea. And then after it was up and I was watching it, I'm like, why does that idea seem like so familiar? Like it's something that I saw somewhere else. And then I realized that was a gag that was already done by my friends at RB Comics. I forget what it was in reference to, but they totally did that gag before I did. I can see it clearly in my mind right now, one of the characters just flashing back to some smut and that song Careless Whisper playing in the background. So if I left that into the profile as is, it would have totally seemed like I was completely cribbing off of their stuff, and of course I didn't want that. So I went back and I found the Kenny G song, which was one of the possibilities for that section anyway. So I just went with that instead, and hopefully it doesn't seem like I completely jacked their joke. But anywho, on to other things. If you look really closely at this profile and dissect it with your eyes, you can really see my quote-unquote technique in making a complete product here. I almost hate to put it like this because I do expect people to watch these profiles and enjoy them, but a lot of times it's more about filling time than it is being creative. And a lot of times with this, like a character such as this, you're left with just a scant amount of footage to work with. And in an instance such as this, where the character Satori is going to be featured in this profile even longer than he was featured in the episode, you really have to do some monkey work to make that happen and make it not so noticeable that you're reusing footage. Almost crazy early in this profile, I was already taking and reusing shots that had already been used earlier in the profile. And to make it not seem like you're just watching repeat footage, I just take a certain clip and I just flip it. If it's going right to left, I make it go from left to right. And when you're watching all these clips fly by in succession at such a rapid rate, your eyes see that, they catch it, and they don't even recognize that it's the same clip over and over and over again. When you keep flipping it back and forth, the mind is just gonna read it as like a completely different clip, which that technique has helped me and paid dividends in the past. I'm sure there are some viewers that didn't even question the profile, that didn't see or notice that they were just the same clip over and over and over. Of course, it also helps not to pick like obvious clips, like clips where, like the scene where Ranma and Satori were fighting up on the roof there. If I had flipped that, then people would really notice because it's pretty memorable and it's a very specific situation. To see that flipped, like mirrored, that would stick out like a sore thumb, I would think. So that's why, it mostly works for just like still frames of characters talking, flapping lips. You know, if nothing really is happening, those are the clips that are perfect to fill those gaps. Just reverse them and stick them in and they do the job. Now, I mentioned earlier that this profile took about 4 months to complete start to finish. Well, that is true, but I wasn't really working on it like tooth and nail. Like, this was just one of many projects that I was in the middle of. I think I was working on about 5 major projects at the time I was doing this. And this was just something I was keeping in the back burner, and just little by little I would add a little here, a little there, and that's, that contributed to why it took so long. I'm sure I could have completed this quicker if I was just, solely working on this and not, looking at other things down the road. And when it was finally finished, it was just like an extra special treat because it's like it popped up out of nowhere. I felt like that the work that I had done on it had been strewn so light over such a long period of time, it felt like it just kind of like materialized and it didn't take any work to complete this thing. It's like when you were in school and you did something wrong and the teacher made you write something 100 times. I'm sure a lot of us did it the same way. You just wrote one letter like 100 times and then you wrote the next letter 100 times, and by the time you were done you had the full sentence there. It seemed like it took so much less time, but actually it was the same amount of work. Same basic deal there. Right here is the scene that I had intended on being the only live action scene of the profile, the one that I filmed in Maui. Very, very blistering hot that day, and you can see just the very real sweat all over my forehead in that shot. And I think it helped because, of course, the whole idea of this profile was heat can do some crazy things to the human brain. But anyway, as I was saying before, I interrupted myself, so the profile just kind of like appeared out of nowhere, and when it came time to export this file, wouldn't you know it, I must sound like a broken record by now because I seem to, tell the same story in every damn commentary that I do on these channels, but I just have no luck, no matter what the editing software I use. Every time I exported it, it's kind of difficult. It's kind of like a long story, and I hate to go into this because the profile is ending here, but I guess I'll just have to entertain you with some blackness at the end of this. Basically, there is an option in most editing softwares where there is a scene selection, which keeps you from having to break the video up yourself. And I used that for this profile. You just let it go for a little while. This Power Director is really bad at it. It takes forever. But you wait like an hour and it splits it up into scenes for you. Like every time that there's a cut scene in the actual video, it'll make a cut there. So it's a lot easier to find certain scenes and to work with because it's already pre-cut for you. Hopefully that was easy to understand. But in any case, I did that on this profile, and for a couple of instances, I would notice that it would be in the middle of going to the next cut, and you'd see like a transparent image of the cut that was going to go after, like mixed into that image, and it would look like the screen would just flip a little bit. And what really broke my balls is that you didn't see that while you were editing it. It was only in the export it popped up. So you pretty much know how the story went. I had to watch this thing start to finish, and I would see where these flips happened. I had to go back into the software and find where these flips were and correct them. Usually that meant cutting it off early and slowing down the clip. That way, you know, that moment of transparency has been cut out. But then I would export again, and I would find all new ones that I didn't see before. And at the time, I thought, all right, I must just not have watched it close enough. I didn't notice these little hiccups. So I'd have to go back into the program and fix all those up again, and then re-export it again, and it just kept going on and on and on. I keep finding new little flipping scenes, and it was just going on forever and with no end in sight. Until eventually, what happened was I found a flip that happened on a clip that I had already fixed. And then I said to myself, well, now this freaking program is just screwing with me. It just must be some kind of problem with Power Director. I don't know what the heck happened. So I just left it as is. And wouldn't you know it, on the YouTube player, you don't even notice any of those little video hiccups there. It just kind of like, I guess it plays at like a different frame rate as when you play them, just straight on the computer. But yeah, you don't even notice any of the flip effects. But trust me, they were all over the finished product. You just don't notice them in the YouTube window. So yeah, it took me forever. It took me 2 days of straight like export failure, and of course in between watching this movie over and over and over, probably about like 23 times before I was finally, I won't say I was happy with it because I really wasn't. It still had faults up the yin yang, but until I finally had enough, let's just put it that way. So, anywho, with that out of the way, we are at the end of yet another Ranma 1/2 character profile commentary. This is your good buddy Djclyve. I can't believe it's been so long since I've done one of these. It actually was very, very fun to jump right back into it. Maybe I should go back and, revisit some of those old movies from back in the day. I would do Cartoon Limbo, but it does kind of seem weird to be, like, doing a commentary on a review. That's kind of, I don't know, it's like reviewing your review. It's kind of redundant there. But yeah, I haven't talked over the old like Ranma Saotome profile and the 5 Faces of Ranma, all of that. Maybe I'll get back into the game with this, and there's still quite a few movies that I can, old projects that I can talk to you about the behind the scenes stuff on. As for what's coming up next, I really don't know, because for once in my life, my drawing board is kind of empty. I do have some things that I'm about to jump into, but right now I'm not in the middle of anything besides the usual Limbo grub, stuff like that. If too much time elapses between now and the last episode of the Djclyve show, I have toyed with the idea of releasing it early. Even though it kind of screws with the continuity of things. But it all depends on just how much time has elapsed and if there's really no activity on the channel. If I find out that my my channel is nothing but like straight limbo grub and there's nothing else on there, I might decide to fire up the Djclyve show, the final episode, you know, if there's not enough progress. Really don't want to do that, but unfortunately I might not have a choice. So yeah, this is your good buddy Djclyve signing off, and oh wow, it's been a long time since I've done this, but until next time, life is Ranma, guys. Take care, see ya.